Hello and welcome to Unit 12. In Unit 12, we are talking about probability. In Unit 12, Section 1, we are talking about probability and odds. So Unit 12, Section 1 is just kind of an intro. So if you look at the front page, we have a whole bunch of definitions to talk about. So when we're talking about probability, the first thing we need to talk about is the outcome. So outcomes are all the possible results of an experiment. So if you think of an experiment as something like rolling a number cube, which is the same thing as a die, or flipping a coin. So all the outcomes for rolling a number cube are 1 through 6. The outcomes for flipping a coin would be heads or tails. So that's what we're talking about there. An event is an outcome or a collection of outcomes. So an event could be rolling a 3, or rolling an even number, or rolling a multiple of 2. Those are all events. Favorable outcomes are, once you specify an event, they're the outcome of that event. Meaning, so if I'm rolling a number cube and my event is that I'm trying to roll an odd number, then all my favorable outcomes would be 1, 3, and 5. So the next definition is the probability. The probability is just the measure of the likelihood that the event will occur. So the probability of rolling an odd number, or the probability of a coin landing on tails. So we have two types of probability we're going to talk about here. The first one is theoretical probability, and the other one's experimental probability. So if you think about science class, when you do an experiment, you're actually figuring out what's going on. A theory is a hypothesis, or something that you can't necessarily, well, that you could prove, but you're not actually doing the action of proving it. So theoretical probability is going to be a fraction. On the top of the fraction is the number of favorable outcomes. On the bottom of the fraction is the number of possible outcomes. So again, that's based on knowing all the possible outcomes, but not actually doing it. So I could find the probability of rolling a 2 on a number cube without actually rolling the 2, or actually rolling the number cube. Experimental probability is then the number of successes over the number of trials. So if you notice, this is because we're actually doing the experiment. So if I actually rolled the number cube 10 times and I was trying to get an even number, I put the number of even numbers that I got on the top, and then I put 10 on the bottom. In the next part, we're going to look at interpreting probabilities. So probabilities fall between 0 and 1. Okay, 0 means it's impossible. It's never going to have to happen. So an example of something that has 0 probability is the probability of rolling a 7 on a number cube. A number cube only goes through 6. So the probability of rolling a 7 is 0. Okay. On the other end, a probability of 1 means it's absolutely certain. Okay, so the probability of rolling a number when I roll the number cube would be 1. I'm always going to roll a number no matter how I roll it. So then if you think of a probability right in the middle at 0.5, that's going to be half and half. So an example would be the probability of flipping a coin and it landing on heads. That's going to be a 50-50 probability. As you get closer to 1, so for instance, a probability of 0.75 is likely. If you go away from 1, so a probability of 0.25 would be unlikely. Then we have a couple of definitions for finding odds. Odds is a little bit more difficult. When you do probability, the bottom of your fraction is always going to be the total number. Okay. For odds, it's a little different. They add up to the total number. So when I'm doing odds in favor, that's going to be the number of favorable outcomes I have over the number of unfavorable outcomes I have. So say I wanted to roll a multiple of 3 on a number cube, I would have 3 and 6. So I'd have 2 favorable things, but then I'd have 4 unfavorable things. And then the odds against are just the reverse. So for odds against, on the top, you have the number of unfavorable outcomes. On the bottom, you have the number of favorable outcomes. And this will make a little bit more sense as we actually work through some examples. So if you look at the next page of your notes, it says use the spinner to answer questions 1 through 3. So we just have a spinner with numbers 1 through 6 on it. So the first question says, what is the probability that the spinner stops on a multiple of 2? So again, we do probability, we're doing the number of favorable outcomes over the total number of possibilities. So it says, what is the probability that the spinner stops on a multiple of 2? So my multiples of 2 are 2, 4, and 6. So I have 3 multiples of 2, so that's going to go on the top. over my total amount is just the 6 numbers that I have. So I have 3 multiples of 2 over 6 total numbers, and then I need to simplify that to 1/2. For number 2, it says, what are the odds against stopping on a number greater than 4? So I have 2 numbers that are greater than 4, 5 and 6, and then I have 4 numbers that are not greater than 4. So now I need to figure out what goes on top and what goes on the bottom. So it says, what are the odds against stopping on a number greater than 2? So that would be the 4 that I don't want would be on the top, and the 2 that I do want would be on the bottom because it's the odds against. And then if I simplify that, I just get 2 to 1. Number 3 says, what are the odds in favor of stopping on a number less than 6? So I have 5 numbers that are less than 6. I have 1 number that's 6 or greater. It says, what are the odds in favor? So that means I put the ones that I want. There's 5 possible that I want over the one that I don't want, and that would be my probability there. Okay, moving on. It says each letter in the word probability is written on separate slips of paper and placed in a bag. A letter is chosen at random from the bag. So it says, what is the probability that the letter chosen is a B? So I have 2 B's in the word probability over 11 total letters. So that would be my probability. So the probability of pulling a 2 out of the bag is 2 11s. Sorry, pulling a B out of the bag is 2 11s. For number 5, it says, what is the probability that the letter chosen is a vowel? So I have 4 vowels, and again, I still have 11 total letters, so that's going to be on the bottom. And the last one says, what are the odds in favor of choosing a consonant? So odds in favor, which means the ones I want will be on top. We just said that there was 4 vowels, which means there's 7 consonants over the 4 vowels that I don't want. Again, that's odds in favor, so I put the number of ones I want on the top, the ones I don't want on the bottom. On the next page for number 7, this is an example of an experimental probability. It says you plant 40 seeds of a certain flower and 26 of them sprout. Find the experimental probability that the next flower seed planted will sprout. So we're basing it off of an experiment we've actually done. So we want the number of successes, which in this case is 26, over the total number of trials, which would be 40. And then I can reduce that, and I'll get 13 over 2. Sorry, 13 over 20. All right, at the bottom of this, we've got some review problems. You're just evaluating the expression. Remember, that just means you're going to plug in the numbers and replace the letters. So work those out. Make sure you work those out and check them. And then you can show me your notes or Ms. Swami your notes before you take the Unit 12 Section 1 check-in.